All right, we talked about protests happening all around the country. Probably the biggest, or at least the most widely based protest is this fight for the minimum wage. This was in New York City earlier outside a McDonald's, but it's happening and being replayed in 300 cities across the country. A push right now to raise the minimum wage to $15. It's already going to happen in California. It's happening in cities like Seattle, elsewhere, and they want to see this follow. Along with a million student march, round two, I guess, pushing free college. All right, it might have been hard to hear her, but there is no difficulty hearing her at these rallies. And she's remarkable, again, whether you accept her point of view or not. And I think other candidates, particularly those on the left, might want to pay attention to the message because it resonates. And this goes way beyond just that Bernie Sanders crowd. Dharleta Scruggs is her name, Million Student March organizer, among other things. Dharleta, very good to have you.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me on.
You're into this because you say that conventional politicians have forgotten this, forgotten these causes, and you include Hillary Clinton in that group. Why?
I mean, I think Hillary Clinton is the perfect representation of what corporate politicians stand for. She's a candidate of Walmart, Wall Street, and war. And politicians like Hillary don't prioritize things like education, quality education, affordable education, which is why I participated in this Million Student March, because what we are seeing is a crisis where millions of students are being faced with the question of debt and how they're going to pay for education. I myself being one of those young people that don't know what to do around the question of going to college, receiving a degree. And I'm told as a young person that that is a requirement in order to get a good job, in order to have a quality life, but yet it's become so inaccessible for a large majority of young students.
So you think the government should pay for that?
I think the government needs to reassess its priorities, right? We prioritize a lot of things, but education doesn't seem to be one of them. For example, we just found out that the U.S. is launching a new initiative to upgrade its nuclear arsenal. That's going to cost $1 trillion over the next 3 decades. If there's $1 trillion to invest in nuclear weapons, there certainly is money to invest in education. Why do we prioritize war and nuclear weapons over education and justify having millions of students go into debt seeking a quality education?
Now, you raise a good point, but Dharleta, if you think about it, we could prioritize all we want on things we want to do, but we don't have the money, right? We're running a $19+ trillion debt. So what do you say to that?
Well, that's always the excuse that is often being told, right? We don't have the money for anything. I say that our country really lacks creativity and the will. But what's being sold to me as a young person is this dream that if I go to college, if I seek an education, if I work hard, then I have the opportunities to advance in life. But what the system has shown us, and particularly this system of capitalism, is that this system cannot produce any substantial quality of life, no matter how hard you work. We are seeing poverty. 1/3 of U.S. households cannot afford basic necessities like rent, food, and transportation. This is a problem. We are seeing 1 million students last year alone default on their student loans. $176 million were garnished from working people wages to pay back student loan debts. So if this system doesn't have the money to provide for housing, food, shelter, and education, then maybe we need a new system because it isn't working.
All right, so let's say you do get a new system, Dharleta, and the idea that, let's say, we pay for college for everybody. Then wouldn't those colleges, knowing that Uncle Sam or whomever is picking up the tab, wouldn't they just keep ratcheting up the price of college?
Yeah, we've seen the price of college already be ratcheted up. Over 1,000% we've seen increases in college tuitions. But it also goes back into priorities, because in the U.S., you have 11 states that spend more money on prisons than they do public education. So where are our priorities? And one of the demands in Million Student March that has been added is a divestment for private prisons. The prison industry has been a boom. It's been a large investment because it's more profitable to funnel people into prisons, particularly black youth and black young people, than it is to provide quality and accessible education. We need to really question a society that will rather have most of its population in prison and jail cells than in classes receiving quality education.
You know, one of the solutions that Bernie Sanders has come up with, and I know you're a fan of his, not so much Hillary Clinton, is just to put it, to tax the rich more, to tax Wall Street, but to what end? Because even he has acknowledged taxing them to the hilt won't pay for all of this. So he has extended that to the middle class, raising taxes on the middle class. At least he's honest about it, because he says, yeah, you're going to pay more, but you're going to get more. Do you buy that? Do you think there is a limit to how much you could tax the rich, how much you could tax companies, how much you could tax anyone else?
There is a limit, but then that's when, Neil, that's when I talk about creativity, because we also have to look at not just taxing, but investments. When you look at the private prison industry, the two largest investors have 20%, are actually 401k plan providers, a Vanguard being one, Fidelity. That means people that pay into their 401ks, people that pay into their pensions, public sector workers, people that are looking to retire in the future, their money is actually being invested into CCA and GEO Group, the two largest private prison corporations in America. So why don't we invest? Why don't we invest in education?
You know, you could talk about.
A lot of people don't know that.
I understand, but you're talking about select investments they have that might mar, but otherwise is a valuable role some of these companies play to look after money for folks for many decades. Stepping back from that, though, I wonder where you draw the line on high taxes. I've heard, and you're a YouTube sensation. I mean, you really are a marvel to watch.
We can get trapped into this conversation of taxes.
Tax rate? What do you think it should be?
But what I would do is to correct, when we talk about taxing the 1%, and I did see the previous interview you did where you said the 1% is anyone making above $250,000 or more. I would completely disagree with you and what you think the 1% is. But when we say the 1%, we're talking about those that are making billions of dollars, particularly off of industries like private prisons. When we talk about the 1%, we're talking about Wall Street bankers.
You want to go after the millionaires and billionaires.
Let's go 0.01%. We're talking billionaires, not millionaires. Billionaires. We're talking to Rothschild. We're talking to Waltons. We're talking to the Koch brothers.
If you raised the taxes on all of those guys, you think it would pay for all of this stuff?
But the higher, statistics shows, the higher you go up that economic food chain, the less they're paying in taxes anyway. So there's plenty of room to actually raise taxes. The 0.01% are not paying the same amount of taxes as a working class person is paying. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to also look at the amount of corruption that is happening.
You were right about that, and you articulated well. But I'm just saying this. What I see is a great deal of creativity on some on the left to find great ways to get more money, to raise more money. But as you did, and you acknowledged about our debt in the beginning, we had our priorities screwed up. And that, too, I agree with you. So why can't we show as much creativity looking at how we're spending our money, and then rather than go knee-jerk toward trying to get more money? Find out first how we're spending it.
But Neil, where are we spending our money? We're spending our money on wars. We're spending our money on tax breaks for big wealthy corporations.
Well, how do you feel about spending money on How do you feel about spending money on Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid?
That is our budget. Our military budget was $607 billion, larger than 7 countries combined.
But how do you feel? Okay,
so we're not going to pit one being more important than the other. The issue is we're prioritizing war and prison more than education and health care. 600 plus billion we're spending on the military. There are many conservatives, by the way. Wait a minute. There's a lot of conservatives who agree that that number is too big and unaccounted. So then we have the money that's being spent on all these entitlements. Would you rein them in as well? Because they're growing at a far faster pace. Actually, and I would also rein in the $1 trillion that's being used to upgrade our nuclear weapons. That should not be a priority to have more nuclear weapons. If there's $1 trillion,
I do want to ask you. I know you want to paramilitary. I know you want to paramilitary.
That is additional money.
It's all included in military plans. I do want to ask you though, this other stuff though.
There's creativity. There's creativity when it comes to war.
Understood.
We shouldn't have to cut it. We shouldn't be a question of cutting things. There's money there. If we can pull $1 trillion to say, oh, we need more nuclear weapons, then obviously there's money lying around that can be used to pay for education. The fact that I have to get on here and argue for education is asinine.
Okay, but Darletta, let's say we wiped out that $600 billion. We didn't spend a penny on defense. Let's say we wiped that out. We'd still be barely treading even.
Wipe it out completely.
Okay, I understand. I'm just saying it shows you how big a task this is. Even if you were to wipe out all military spending.
It's not that big of a task. To have free public community college, it would cost $62 billion. The U.S. government spent $69 billion in 2014 just on financial aid programs.
All right,
the money
is there. What I'm saying is you want to cut defense. And my hat's off to you. I think there's probably room
we need to readjust our priorities.
But I'm just saying to you, fine, I agree with that. But let's say we wiped out all defense spending. Let's say now we're treading even.
Who's making that argument, Neil? Who's making that argument?
I'm just as an example.
You've taken
you're
taking it to the next level.
No, Darletta, I'm just using an example.
That's the worst example. We can use better examples.
Darletta, please listen to me, and I will let you talk, I promise. If we wipe that out, and I'm sure you don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, but we wiped it out. You know, the government is still in the position of running in the red. So then what do we prioritize on to get back to the things that you think are important?
I shouldn't have to answer the question of how to handle the deficit that the government created. I'm not a government official. I wasn't elected into office to solve these problems. I'm a tax-paying citizen, a young person that is seeking opportunities in a system that is unable to provide it regardless of what the argument is. And I say that this system of capitalism has proven itself illegitimate, and it cannot provide basic things like education, shelter, health care. We need to readjust how we view our society if someone has to get on here and defend the right to education.
All right, so let me then ask, because I know you're raising a 4-year-old boy. It's tough, and I grant you that. But I am wondering that other countries around the world that have tried to afford protections like the ones that you outlined, that don't spend nearly what we do on our military, are in a world of hurt right now. Greece and Italy, Portugal and Spain, even France. And they have provided a lot of these entitlements you talk about, including free college in many of those countries.
And no, they're hurt because they're storing offshore money, because their governments are assisting in storing offshore money in safe havens that aren't being taxed. $22 trillion is sitting in banks that are untaxed. So we're talking about corrupt government officials, and you're comparing that to having affordable college.
No, I'm not.
Those aren't the same thing.
I'm sorry you got that impression,
there's other circumstances that's creating the economic catastrophe there, and it's greed.
And if you'll just hear me out, I'll let you reply because you make great points. All I'm saying is, if all of these countries that have promised, free health care, free college, early retirement as young as 42 in some countries, and they're coming back to realize we can't afford it anymore, and it's leading to riots because the government.
That's not true, Neil. You have other places.
Did you see what's happening in Greece?
Did you see
what's happening in Italy?
I'm in Germany. What's happening in Greece is due to what happened in the 07-08 economic crisis. And who caused that? Wall Street, banks, predatory lending, corruption, laws that were breaking. And did any banker go to jail for that? No. We're investing in these prisons. Why don't we put some of these bankers in there?
I saw your comments in Germany.
We have all of these prisons.
Darletta, I caught your comments in Germany. You were really impressive out there.
You do good research.
But that country doesn't do nearly the amount of this stuff that these other countries do. It's the country that Greece comes to get money. It's the country that's leading Europe.
How do you know that? I totally disagree. You're pointing to Greece because it fits your argument. But we have Sweden, we have Finland, we have Brazil, we have plenty of countries that offer free college education.
It's the strongest economy in Europe, precisely because it did not go down this path of the government providing all of this stuff. Now, I'm not saying some of your priorities aren't good, and they're valid.
Germany has free college education and free health care. We're only talking about the topic of college education. Now you're trying to blow it up of all the problems in the world. We're talking about college education.
You're saying
and Greece can do it. Can the U.S. not provide education to its citizens?
Germany
Is that what you're telling me in the United States?
Germany
that the United States
to
cannot provide education to its citizens? That's what you're telling me now? Is that what you're telling me?
You don't want to hear it. I'm not preaching it. I'm just telling you facts.
I'm asking you a question.
Germany is the strongest economy in Europe.
Help me understand. We're talking about the U.S. I don't want to talk about Germany. Let's talk about the U.S. The U.S. cannot provide education to its citizens. That's what you're telling me?
You can't suit the facts to suit your point of view. You make a very good and passionate point about
We're talking about the United States.
But you're not talking about, you want to get rid of that.
Who is about to spend $1 trillion on nuclear weapons.
All right, fine. But do you think Bernie Sanders is right to
You're
just raise taxes?
refusing to answer my question. You're refusing to answer my question. You're saying that the United States cannot provide quality education to its citizens. That is the reality. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm saying the United States can't afford, as things are now, to pay for college for everybody without paying through the nose and taxing a lot of people. That's the way things stand now.
But I just gave you multiple ways that it can be paid for, and you agree with that.
I agree with the idea we have to reprioritize. All I'm saying, Darleta, bear with me, Darleta. All I'm saying is, can we reprioritize to the point, first to address spending, before we talk about hiking taxes on anyone?
We're talking about investment in prisons. That is one place where we can easily reprioritize. We don't need to be building more prisons. We have more prisons in the U.S. than degree-granting college and universities. That is a problem. We can invest that money that's being invested in prisons into universities that can educate young people.
All right, Darleta.
Do you not agree, Nil?
I agree on one thing, and I think we're past each other here. We can reprioritize. We can set our focus. All I'm saying, Darleta, before we talk about raising taxes, let's focus on where our tax money's already going.
No one said anything about raising taxes but you, Nil.
No,
you pointed to raising taxes.
I follow you on YouTube. You talk about the rich and the banks. No, I'm using your words. I've heard you on YouTube talking about raising taxes and the rich and the banks. But when you say raising
taxes, you want your viewers who are crunched financially to feel like taxes are going to be raised on them. When I say raising taxes, I'm talking about bankers. I'm talking about the 0.01%, the Rothschilds, the Waltons, billionaires, hedge fund billionaires. We're talking about two different people here.
All right. All I'm talking about is if you raise that on all of those guys, then you're quite right. They do escape a lot of taxes. But even taxing to the full hilt isn't going to address everything you want. So the bottom line we agree on, I do agree with you on this, we can reprioritize. All I'm asking is let's reprioritize first. Before we decide on trying to give the government more money, let's find out what the hell it's doing with the money it has, right?
We know what it's doing with the money. It's giving tax breaks to the rich, and it's paying for war. Expensive wars. We know. I'm not confused. Maybe you should do some more research, Neil, if you're confused about where your tax dollars are going. I understand exactly where it's going, and it's not going anywhere in education because it's not profitable. We live in a system of capitalism where the idea is to make money. If it doesn't make money, it's not a priority. We need to restructure our society and how it's set up and reprioritize on what we value as important. And money and profits should not be more important than education and human life. And the fact that it is a problem.
Thank you very much. Đarleta Scruggs, a leader of a movement that is now a very, very big cause. Hillary Clinton might want to pay attention.